Hi guys, what's up and welcome to Module 2 for your 3D modeling course. For this project, we will be building this Game Boy Advance. So let's get started. So I'm going to create a new project. And then I have a reference copy or a reference image of our Game Boy Advance over here. I just downloaded this on the internet, so you can just search Game Boy Advance. You can also try building other game consoles like Nintendo Switch or PS1 or whatever. But for this project, I will be showing you how to build this. Let's just bring in this reference image into our Cinema 4D scene. So I'm just going to create a plane like so, and then I will just rotate it 90 degrees. So here in my coordinates, I'm just going to type in 90 and click apply. And then I'm just going to create a new material. And then I will load our reference image. So I'm just going to go to color and then go to texture. And then load in our Game Boy Advance image. Okay, so then click no. And then let's just add this to our plane. So now we have a good reference in our Cinema 4D scene. Let's just move this to the side. Okay, so for this lesson, we will be learning Booleans. You will be using two or more objects, and then you would either be using one object to subtract itself from the other, or you will be uniting these two objects together. So what do I mean? Let's try to build a cube like so. So we will just be trying to copy our reference image over here. And then for example, we want to embed sort of like a cylinder shape into our cube. So we would also create a cylinder, and then we would intersect it with our cube over here. So we will push it down so that it would intersect. By the way, make sure as well, when you set your cube from the very beginning, select it, go to your attributes manager, and then make sure to add a few numbers to your segments over here. So let's go to our wireframe view, so ground shading and then lines. So now you can see that we have quite a few lines by adding some values here in our segments. So it's very important that your mesh or your cube has a lot of lines so that the Boolean will be able to cut through our cube. Okay. So I think this is enough. And then under generators, you can either go to create and then generator and then look for Boolean. It's right over here. Okay. Or you can just go to here in our icon menu and then look for Boolean. Okay. So we now have Boolean in our object manager. Let's select both our cube and our cylinder and then parent it under Boolean. So now you can see that our cube disappeared and then our cylinder is the one that remained. So what happened was the cube was subtracted from our cylinder. So to do it in reverse, we just need to, let me just zoom in. We just need to reverse the order of these two polygons. So I'm just going to click and drag the cube and move it up. And now if I zoom out, you can see that the cylinder is sort of like subtracting our cube. Okay, so you can see here, it's a similar shape to our reference image over here. So that is Booleans. We will be using this a lot later in this project. So let's just analyze first our object and then let's try to build it. So as you can see, we need one cylinder, one cube over here, and then another one over here, and then there's going to be another one at the bottom, and then a cylinder for the hinge, and then also cylinders for our buttons. So let's get started. So I'm going to create another cube over here. I'm gonna scale it down using our handles like so. And then to sort of like taper or to round our edges, I'm gonna make this into editable mesh. So I'm gonna click here, make editable. We can now access the points, the edges, and the faces of our polygon. Okay, so a little bit of review. So in each polygon, you can alter the basic form or the basic shape by making it editable, and then by accessing the vertices, the edges, and the faces over here. So just select it in your viewport, and then you just use your move, scale, and rotate tools to deform your object. So for this one, I will be selecting the edges of our cylinder. So I'm gonna select this, and then our other edges over here. So I'm just rotating the camera. So by the way, to rotate the camera, press 1 and left click to pan, then 2, left click to zoom, and then 3 on your keyboard, left click to orbit or rotate your camera. Alright, so once we have selected all of our edges, right click on it, and then we're looking for bevel. Okay, so it's over here. So right click and then click on bevel. So now our icon for our mouse changes, and then if we left click and drag on our viewport, we can see that our edges are being chiseled. Okay, and then we can see here in our attributes manager the attributes for our bevel. So I'm just going to add a few subdivisions over here. So I'm just going to add a few numbers. So let's add maybe 3 or 4. So just try to see what looks right. So I guess 4 is the smoothest one. And then after that, let's just go back to our selection tool. And now we have our edges beveled. So I would also like to round the edges at the top and at the bottom. So again, I will select all of the edges around at the top and at the bottom. So to do that, I'm going to select this. And then you can keep on selecting around. There's a shortcut though. You go to select and then go to loop selection and then highlight your cursor over your edges. It automatically selects all of your edges at the top. So let's select that, and then also our edges at the bottom. So I'm gonna hold shift on my keyboard and then click to select so that we would be selecting both. And then let's right click again, go to bevel, and then left click and drag to bevel our edges. So now it already adopts the changes that we did before. So our subdivisions are 4 here in our attributes manager, and then our offset is 1.2 centimeters. Okay, so I think this looks right. And then let's click back to our selection. And then I'm going to duplicate this. So edit, copy, and then let's paste it. And then I'm going to move it down. So this will be the cartridge over here. And then let's move to our front view. And then I will just want this to be thicker. So to make it into a thicker shape, I will be accessing the points of our polygon. And then I will change my selection to rectangle selection. And then here from our front view, it is easier to select all of our vertices at the bottom. So I'm just going to click and drag. And then let's just move this down. So now our base is being thicker compared to our other one at the top. Okay. And then next, I'm going to duplicate this one more time. So edit, copy, and then edit, paste. And then on our right view, I'll just move our pivot point to the left. So this is our screen, right? So I just moved it up. So let's just try to move our pivot point to the left side. Let's click our enable axis mode and then with the move tool selected, or the move tool selected over here, let's just move it to the left, like so. Oh, okay, so in our viewport, apparently it goes over here, so we need to move it over here at the side. So most probably that's in the front view, okay? And then let's turn this off. Let's rotate our screen. So I'm just using the rotate tool again and rotate it up. So be very careful in rotating. So I'm gonna place my cursor in this blue manipulator icon, and then I'm just gonna click and drag it up. Here in our coordinates manager, I'm just gonna type in -90 and then click apply so that it'll be more accurate. Okay, so next, let's try to create the speakers and the buttons and all of the indents in our button pad. So first, let's create our cylinder indents. So I'm gonna create a cylinder, and then let's place that on top of our cube over here. And then I'm just going to make it a little bit shorter, and then at the same time, I'm gonna make it smaller and place it maybe over here according to the image. And then we need to intersect it with our cube over here. And then let's create a boolean. Okay, so after that, I'm gonna name this arrow buttons indent, and then let's name this Gameboy button cube. Okay, so let's create a boolean. I'm gonna go to our generators and then click on boolean, and then I'm gonna parent these two to our boolean operation. So again, we have it in reverse. So let's click on the Game Boy Advance and place it on top over here. And then now we have our buttons. So we can still edit your cylinder if you haven't converted to editable mesh yet. So like we can just add a few more segments. So maybe 32 to make it more smoother. And then we can also go to our caps here. And then we can check in fillet. So if we do that, as you can see, our indent for our cylinder becomes more rounded compared to before. So we can just add maybe a few more segments and rotations over here. And then I think that looks good. Let's now create another indent for our two other buttons. The question you might be asking right now is, sir, can I have two or more things sort of like subtracting our main object? Yes, you can. There are a few things that you must remember lang. So one is you need to group it all together into one null. So for example, I'm going to create a null over here, and then I'm going to place it under our boolean, and then I'm going to make sure our arrows are under that null. Okay? So now anything under this null, so let's name this subtract objects. Anything under this will subtract our Game Boy buttons cube. Okay, so now let's maybe duplicate this cylinder again. So edit, copy, and paste, and then place it under our subtract null object again. So as you can see, it is now affecting our boolean. And then let's just scale this down. Okay, so now I'm gonna place it here at the center. Maybe I'll change to my top view to have a better view of our object or idea. Okay, so I'm just going to try to scale this down. So I'm gonna use the scale tool, and then if your scale tool doesn't work, switch from model mode to object mode. So now you're able to scale it. Okay. And then let's duplicate this. So another shortcut for duplicating is if you hold down Control or Command on your keyboard and then left click and drag, it will just duplicate your current object. So now I just duplicated our cylinder and it's still inside our null. So that's a little bit faster, a faster way to work. Okay, so I'm just gonna select these both. Okay, so let's name this, I guess this is the start button indent, and then this is the select button indent. All right, so next, let's try to build this set of buttons naman. So the ended part of that. Oh, before we do that, this is a similar shape naman, our reset button. So let's just create another one. So I'm just gonna select this, and then I'm gonna hold Control or Command on my keyboard, and then left click and drag, so that I'll just place it over here at the very top, and then scale it down, and then make sure it is intersecting our cube. So now we have also our reset button, and then last but not the least is our AB buttons. We'll do the speakers later. So our AB buttons over here. Okay, so for our AB buttons, what we can do is create another cube, and then again try to bevel the edges like what we did before. So let's create a cube. So that's too big. Let's just scale it down and then move it to our Game Boy Advance. Okay, let's make it a little bit thinner and then make it longer, like so. Okay, so now let's make it into an editable mesh. So I'm gonna click on my cube, and then here, make editable. The shortcut for that is letter C on your keyboard. And now I want to match the edges the same way from our reference. So I'm gonna select all of the edges over here. Let's switch it to our live selection tool. I'm gonna hold Shift to select all of the edges. And then once you select all of the edges, right click on your cube and then go to Bevel. And then just left click and drag, make it rounded all the way through, like so. And then I would also like to round the edges of my cube over here at the top and at the bottom. So I'm gonna select the edges again. I'm gonna go to select, then loop selection. So I'm gonna select the top part, and then I'm gonna hold down Shift, and then I'm gonna select the bottom part, and then I'm gonna right click again, click on bevel. Okay, so now left click and drag. So now we are rounding the edges of our cube. So this would be our shape that would subtract our Game Boy Advance button pad. Let's go to our top view to align it properly. So this is our top view. Let's put this shape into our null subtract object. So now we are subtracting our AB select button area. So now we have our buttons all prepared. So let's just make a few indents for our speakers. So again, you need to parent everything inside this null object. So what happens with the speakers? You just need to put all of these shapes lang inside another null. But I will also show you a shortcut for duplicating multiple objects together here in Cinema 4D. Okay, so I'm gonna create a cylinder for our speakers, and then I'm gonna go to our top view and then move it here in our Game Boy Advance pad, and then I'm just gonna make it a little bit thinner. Okay, you now have our speaker over here, and then I would like to duplicate it. So I will be using a cloner to duplicate this like 5 or 4 more times. So the cloner can be found here. So I'm just gonna create this, and then I'm gonna place the cylinder under our cloner. So if you place your cylinder under your cloner, as you can see, it now duplicates your cylinder all throughout this grid. We just need to tweak the settings of our cloner. So for example, here, let's change our size to maybe 10 centimeters to 10 centimeters, like so. And then let's move it to our Game Boy Advance. So now you can see all of our cylinders are duplicated. And then let's just maybe add a few more counts here in our X. So this is the X part, the Y, and the Z. So I think that is a good amount of speaker holes. Okay, so make sure it's indented in our Game Boy Advance. All right, so what we need to do is we need to parent this cloner into another null. So let's create another null over here, and then parent it into a null. So this null, let's name this speaker holes, and then let's parent that under our subtract object null. So now you can see if we parent that into our subtract object null, we have our speaker indents. Let's create the buttons. I think this one is self-exclamatory. It's just cylinders. So let's just build that first. So I'm going to create a cylinder again. A cylinder. And then let's move to our top view. So by the way I'm shifting views from perspective to the top view, the way I'm doing it faster is I'm using my middle mouse button. So if I want to maximize this view, I'm just gonna press my middle mouse button and it maximizes. And then if you want to go back to your orthographic views, just press your middle mouse button again and then switch back. Okay, let's just make this a little bit smaller and make it fit into our indent. Let's go back to our perspective, squish our buttons a bit, and then under our cylinders attribute manager, let's go to our fillet under caps, and then let's check it so that it'll be more rounded. So I'm just gonna tweak this a little bit. So our rotation, we can set it into 32, I guess, to make it more smoother. And then let's place it down here. So let's go to our top view again, and then I'm gonna duplicate this. I'm gonna hold down Control or Command and then left click and drag. So now we have both of our buttons over here. And then I can also duplicate this, Control or Command. Let's drag it to our select indent. And then we can use the scale tool to scale it down and then move this to the center. So I'm gonna switch back, middle mouse button again to minimize our view, and then go to our perspective, maximize it. So we have our select button over here. I'm just trying to center it. And then let's duplicate this one. Hold down Control or Command on your keyboard again, and then move it to the side. And then let's do our reset button over here. So I'm gonna move to my top view, and then I'm gonna hold down Control or Command again to duplicate our button, and then I'll just align it to our reset button over here. And then I'm just going to scale this down. Okay, so now we have all of our buttons over here. For our cross or for our up, down, and left button, we'll be using an extruded text. So under our spline tool or spline create tool, let's go to our text. So here we have a text object in our Cinema 4D. So the way I would create our up, down, and left arrow button, I will just use this text tool and then type in plus. So now we have our plus icon over here, or our plus object. I'm gonna make sure to have a good font. So maybe I'm gonna use an impact font for this. Look for impact. Okay, here. Let's make this into an editable mesh. So let's click on editable mesh, and then now, so let's just center our pivot point. So to do that, let's go to mesh and then axis, and then let's click on axis center. So I just want this pivot point to be moved here at the center. So I'm just gonna click all points and then click execute. There you go. So we have our axis centered. Now let's rotate this. Let's type in 90 in our coordinates manager, and then let's move to our top view and then move this to our controller, resize it like so. Then let's move this down. Okay, we don't see the object yet, so how do we enable Cinema 4D to make this object into a solid one? So we're gonna access an extrude generator over here. So here we can see extrude. Let's click on that to add it into our object, and then let's parent our text under our extrude. And now we have our plus and minus button. So as you can see, it over extruded down. So if I move this up, we can still see the button extruded here. So let's just adjust the settings from our extrude object over here. So let's click on the offset and then let's just make it maybe 5 centimeters like so. And then as you can see, our pivot point is over here. So let's also center that in. So let's go to our mesh again, go to axis, and then let's click on axis center. And then let's uncheck points to center, and then let's check include children and all objects. And then let's click execute. So now it's in the center of our object now. Let's add rounded edges. So let's select our extrude object, go to caps, and then let's look for fillet. So here we have our bevel shape. Let's click on round, and then let's increase the size. So if we increase the size, as you can see, it smoothens our edges. You can also try different settings like so. If you want to stylize your controller, let's also add a few segments. Okay, so I think I'm fine with this. So now we're finished with our gamepad over here. Let's also just create the indents for our cartridge. For our cartridge plate, let's just create another cube. So I can just duplicate this one. I'm gonna hold down Control and left click and drag. So this will be our cartridge. I'm gonna scale this down. Alright, so for example, I imagine this is a cartridge. We'll be using another Boolean, so I'm gonna click on the icons here at the top, and then I'm gonna access another Boolean generator. I'm gonna select both of our cartridge objects and then parent it under our Boolean. And then as you can see, I have it in reverse again. So let's make sure this is placed on top. So this is gonna be the cartridge base. Okay, so let's create the indent for our USB. So let's just create another null over here and then parent it there. So this is our Gameboy base. So it's a combination of our buttons and our cartridge side. And then we'll just create another cube. This will be our USB. So I'm just gonna resize this like so. So this cube will be subtracting these two. So let's go to our generators again, click on Boolean, and then parent these two over there. As you can see, we have it in reverse again. Place our Gameboy Advance at the top, and now we have our Boolean operation activated here in our USB port. So for our screen, so I'm just gonna copy this. So I'm gonna duplicate this one more time. Hold down Command or Control on my keyboard again, and then left click and drag. So we now have a duplicate of our cube. I'm going to scale this down, and then I'm gonna center it into our Gameboy Advance screen. And then I'm just gonna push this forward. So I'll create another Boolean, and then I'm gonna parent this two cubes together into that, place that on top. So this is gonna be screen subtract. So now we have our screen for our Gameboy Advance over here. So I'm just going to create another sphere, and then I'm just gonna manipulate the radius. I'm gonna maybe type in 10, and then let's also rotate it this way. So I'm gonna type in 90 in our coordinates manager, and then let's go to our front view. Let's just place this into position like so. Okay, so we have our sphere in our screen. Let's just duplicate this. Next, let's do the hinge. Let's create a cylinder first, and then let's rotate it. Let's move to our side view. So this is our cylinder. Let's maybe resize it and then move it into position. All right. So let's scale this at the z-axis. So I'm just going to change my mode from model to object mode to scale our cylinder. So I'm just gonna move this, and then I'm gonna duplicate this. I'm gonna hold down Control or Command, and then left click and drag. So I'm just going to create another segment for our cylinder, and then let's duplicate this one. Left click and drag by holding Command. Okay, so now we have our cylinders for our base plate. So let's just put them all into one null so that it'll be more organized. So this is gonna be hinge A. We can use our hinge or our cylinder over here. So I'm just gonna copy it and then copy it one more time. So these are the hinges for the screen, and then I will just be placing them on another null. Okay, so this is our base hinge. I'm gonna parent it into our screen. So let's just move this to the side of our screen. As you can see, I'm just placing it under it, and then this is our screen. I'm gonna parent it into that null. So now if we move our screen, so let's just move our pivot point again. So our pivot point is over here, but our screen is over there. So we need just to click on the axis and just move it to the center so that we are able to control it much better. So let's just move this to our hinge over here. It's similar to moving your pivot point or anchor point in Adobe After Effects. So now make sure if you're gonna move your screen now, axis is turned off, and then let's move this forward. So now we have our screen over here. Oops, we didn't parent our spheres. So let's also make sure to parent it under our screen. And then let's move this forward. Okay, so now we have our screen. We can actually also move our pivot point down and to our side. So here, let's turn on our axis, and then let's turn on our pivot point and move our pivot point here at the bottom, so that once we click rotate, we have our screen rotating. Okay, and then last but not the least is I will just create a cylinder that punches through all throughout all of our cylinders here. So I'm just gonna create another cylinder. Okay, so for texturing, it's very simple. You just create a new texture in materials and then click on standard material. For example, we will add textures to our buttons. So I'm just gonna double click this and then open up our material editor, change the color, and just click and drag it to your viewport. There you go. So you have your red buttons connected, and then we can have a white color for our Game Boy Advance, or maybe like a grayish color, and then let's just add it here also to our base. Just click and drag it there so that it applies to all of your materials here. Let's also drag this to the screen. There you go. So you have your screen for your Game Boy, and then let's also add this to our hinges. Okay, now so we can now delete our reference image, and we are done. So let's try to render this. Go to your render settings. Make sure to check in ambient occlusion and then global illumination. That's it. And then in your anti-aliasing, let's set your setting to best. And then also let's add lights. So I'm just gonna add a few lights over here. Just moving this around. I'm just gonna duplicate this light again. So I'm gonna hold down Control or Command. Move this to the side. And then let's try to render this. Okay, so looking good. So there you go. This is the end of our tutorial. Thank you for watching. So for this submission, please submit a rendered image for your Game Boy Advance. So you can do that by clicking on the picture viewer renderer and then saving it here as an image. Or you can also do a screenshot of your monitor and just send it to me. And then also please send me your Cinema 4D file. Thank you for watching, and I look forward in seeing you in the next tutorial. Bye!